I'm Keirsten Crawford. I'm the 4 and 5-year-old teacher here at Redemption at the main campus, and today we're going to talk about teaching using the flannel board to tell your Bible story with. The first thing I want to talk about is the importance of choosing an area in your classroom that you need to designate as your teaching area, your story time area, whatever you want to call it. It can be the same place where your kids play, but it needs to be a place where they know when we come together in this area, we sit here, teacher sits here, and it's class time. Here in this room, we have the area I set up here where I do things, and then we have a carpet. And all of our kids know when we come and we sit in our squares and Miss Keirsten stands up front, it's class time. It's time to sit still, it's time to listen, and they know we're going to hear a story, we're going to sing praise and worship. And it's a big discipline helper, and it really helps the kids to be able to pay attention and follow what you're doing because they're going to know what to expect. So first of all, before you do anything else, make sure you've chosen your area where you're going to tell your story at. Have a specific teaching area. All right, next what I want to talk to you about is knowing the story before you go to tell the story. Make sure, even if you didn't know what you were teaching until you got to the building and you have to read the story to yourself 3 or 4 times that morning, make sure you know the story you're telling, because it's very hard to keep your kids' attention when you're talking to them like this. You don't want to be reading the story as you're telling it. If you need to have it there to refer to keep yourself on track, that's fine, but you don't want to be dependent on reading the story in order to follow it. So ideally, you'll know a whole week ahead of time what you're going to teach next week. Make it as part of your devotion every day to just zip over to that part of the Bible and read through the story you're going to tell next week, because that's going to enable you to talk naturally, to help keep the kids interested, to keep it moving and flowing, rather than trying to remember who exactly it is you're talking about and losing your place on the page and having to search through and find where you are. So most important thing, read it ahead of time, either out of your storybook, out of your Bible, out of a couple different Bibles, but be familiar with the story you're telling before it's time to tell it. All right here, this is our flannel set. Now you can see I've already got some pieces pulled, but this is how your flannel graph is stored. It's stored on these flat blue pieces. Now these pieces, they have some friction, but if I tilt it straight up, all your pieces are going to fall down. So they stay stored flat. And they stack. Now each and every one of these pieces, you'll see on the blue, it's numbered. Every single piece in this box has a number assigned to it. And that number you can also find very tiny is also on the piece itself. And that is where it goes every single time. The pages are also labeled in the corner. That lets you know what number they stack in. 1 is followed by 2, is followed by 3, etc. Now, that is very, very important, because when you go to look for your pieces, what you're going to use in order to set up your story is what I call the red book. Mine is decrepit because it's almost 10 years old. But the other red books are nice and new. But what you have in here is you have, from Old Testament through New, you're going to see you have your story titles. And what you have here is a picture of what your flannel graph should look like. And underneath here, it has the story for you to be able to read that goes along with the pictures. And what you'll see, you probably can't see on the film, but if you look in your own book, right between these two pictures are tiny little numbers. What these numbers refer to, they let you know what pieces, where to find these pieces in these pictures in these giant boxes. Now, as you use your flannel graph more and more, you'll get to where you can look at the picture and you know exactly where that guy is and how to find him. But when you're still figuring out where all your pieces are, or if there's that one piece you just cannot find, that is, you can look and refer to those tiny little numbers between the two pictures, and you should be able to go to, if you need piece number 185, you can flip through here to page, and you'll find piece 185, just like that. Now, it is very, 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 very important. Say that jokingly, but to keep your pieces in their places. Every time you move to a new story, replace your other pieces back and before you bring out your new pieces. Because you would not believe, first of all, the time it took for your wonderful leaders to cut out all the tiny pieces. And if you had to do it yourself, you'll appreciate it even more. When you receive your brand new flannel set, it is not pre-organized. They are in giant sheets that have to be individually cut out and placed in their correct slot. Once you get them there, you will have to work to keep them in their slots. My best example of why it is important to do that, every single one of these tiny pieces has a number, it had to be individually cut out, and it had to be placed in its outline. And it is very easy to pull a couple pieces off and just set them away, and then, oh well, I'll put it back later. They get lost. You can see I'm missing a couple apples, I'm missing a couple vines of grapes, and it's because somebody at some point used the board and did not put the pieces back. Now if you move over here, I have a nice cautionary box. This is a set that was donated to us that we've really almost never used because who wants to open the box and try to find a piece in all of this mess? And you can see how beautifully they can start out and how quickly they can disintegrate into chaos. Do yourself a favor. Do your ministry leaders a favor. Do not let your box descend into chaos, because you will probably never ever be able to get it back, because it's a daunting task to get them all in the right place. So first and foremost, when using your pieces, keep them in their spots. These are not for children to touch. These are not for your students to help you put the pieces out. This needs to be strictly a teacher's job. Because if you, the teacher, will be responsible for it and keep it all nice and laid out, when you're ready to set up and tell your stories, you'll be able to do it quickly and easily and know exactly where all your pieces are, and everything shall be done decently and in order. All right, now I talked to you just a minute ago about how to use your red book. This book is wonderful. It really does have just about every story I have ever needed to tell for my class. But you will find sometimes it doesn't have the story you need, or maybe you want more in the picture than what is shown in there, or maybe you have a scene set up on every other board and you don't really want to change scenes right in the middle. You want to have another scene set up. So what's great about the flannel pieces is you can, especially once you take the time to get familiar with it, you create your picture. I can start with my plain purple board here, and then I'm going to add my grass. And then we can place a tree. It's going to live right there. I'm going to add a nice hillside there. We're going to put a couple more trees back in the distance. And now, there, we have a lovely nighttime scene. And I'm going to add right into the corner here this prop that I'm going to use for later on in my story. Now, if you want to move right over to here, I've already set out most of my pieces for the story I'm going to demonstrate for you today. Always take time. Part of your classroom setup should be getting your pieces together for the story. This is not something that you can do when the kids are already sitting on the carpet. This needs to be done ahead of time as part of your classroom preparation. Get all your things together. Have a place where you keep your whatever you're using to teach, whether it's your object lesson or it's your flannel pieces. Put them in a place where they're going to be easily accessible once you start to teach. Now I've got almost all my pieces here. I'm going to show you. I'm going to pull out. I need a couple of soldiers. And I've used my flannel graph many times, so I'm already familiar. I know exactly what page my Roman soldiers are on. And then I'm going to move a little further down. And I wanted these soldiers. All right, now I've got all my pieces together. And I've got them stacked according to how I'm going to need them, what scenes I'm creating. And it just makes it easier because you can move right through once you start talking, once you start telling your story, and you'll be all ready to go. Once again, as you can see, there's a lot that can go into telling a story. Now, I'm going to do a long story today of bigger scenes, bigger things. Some days you might just have one picture, and other days, depending on how much time or how much of a story you want to tell, you might have 3 boards set up, or 1 board that you change 3 times. But whatever it is, know ahead of time going into it what you're going to do, set your pieces up, know your story so that you can tell it naturally without keeping your nose in a book, and you'll be able to move through in a wonderful, entertaining manner, and your children will be enraptured with your storytelling abilities. All right, now we're going to get ready to move over, and I'm going to show you how to tell a story.